She like a song played again and again. That girl, like something off a poster. That girl is a dime, they say. That girl is a gun to my holster. And she's running through my mind all day. Hey.
Good day everyone! Welcome to my vlog. I'm your vlogger Joanna Caballero, and today's vlog I'm gonna talk all about culture, the meaning, characteristics, and functions. Let's define what is culture. Culture sometimes an individual is described as a highly cultured person, meaning thereby that as the person is questioned has a certain feature such as his speech, manner, and taste of literature, music, or painting which distinguish him from others. Sometimes culture is used in popular discourse to culture refers to some of human beings' life ways, their behavior, belief, feeling, and thoughts, and that is the culture. According to E.A. Hobler, culture is the sum total of integrated learned behavior patterns which are characteristics of the members of a society and which are therefore not the result of biological inheritance. So we're gonna go to the characteristic of cultures. So there has a 17 characteristic in cultures. First characteristic of culture is learned behavior. Learned behavior, even though they may have innate components or underpinnings, allow an individual organism to adapt to changes in the environment. Learned behavior is to allow an individual organism to adapt to changes in the environment. A concrete example of this characteristic is when we go to other places or countries, we will observe their culture and behavior. So after some time, we will learn to adapt its environment and act as one of them. It is because we adapt their culture. The second characteristic of culture is abstract. Culture exists in the minds or habits of the members of society. Culture is the shared ways of doing and thinking. There are degrees of visibility of cultural behavior, ranging from the regularized activities of persons, so there are internal reasons for so doing. In other words, we cannot see culture as such, we can only see human behavior. This behavior occurs in regular pattern fashion, it is called culture. And the third characteristic of culture is pattern of learned behavior. Culture is the patterns of learned and shared behavior and belief of a particular social, ethics, or age group. It can also be described as the complex whole of collective human belief with the instructed stages of civilization that can be specific to nation or time period. And the fourth characteristic of culture is the products of behaviors, includes what we think, how we act, and what we own. Culture is considered a link to the past and a guide to the future, since it is the product of human influences throughout history and of studied and forecasted upon by those studying humans. Human behavior is a central aspect of culture because of this. The fifth characteristic of culture includes attitudes, values, knowledge. Culture refers to the cumulative deposit of knowledge, experience, belief, values, attitudes, meaning, hierarchies, religion, notion of time, rules, spatial relation, concept of the universe, and materials, objects, and possessions acquired by the group of people in the course of generation through individuals. And the sixth characteristic of culture includes materials, objects. Materials culture refers to the physical objects, resources, and spaces that people use to define their culture. This includes machines, ornaments, arts, buildings, monuments, written records, religion image, clothing, and any other ponderable objects produced or used by humans. If all the humans being in the world cease to exist, non-material aspects of culture would cease to exist along with them. And number 7, a characteristic of culture is shared by the members of society. Culture is everything made, learned, or shared by the members of a society, including values, beliefs, behaviors, and material objects. Culture is learned and if varies tremendously from society to society. Although cultures vary dramatically, they all consist of two parts, material culture and non-material culture. The 8th characteristic of culture is super-organic. It implies that culture is somehow superior to nature, that the word super-organic is useful when it implies that what may be quite a different phenomenon from a cultural point of view. And the 9th characteristic of culture is pervasive. Culture is pervasive. It touches every aspect of life. A culture, like an individual, is a more or less consistent pattern of thought and action. Within each culture, there come into being characteristic purposes not necessarily shared by other types of society. Number 10 of characteristic of culture is a way of life. Culture means simply the way of life of the people or their design of being. Culture is a way of life, a group of people. The behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbolize that they accept generally without thinking about them, and that are passed along the communication and imitation from one generation to the next. Culture is symbolic communication. Culture is a way of life means that you, the culture, is what you live in, what you do, what you believe, what are your behavior, values, and symbolics that you live in life. And number 11, the characteristic of culture. Culture is a human product. Culture is not a force operating by itself and independent of the human actors. While human societies and cultures are not the same thing, they are inextricably connected because culture is created and transmitted to others in society. Cultures are not the product of lone individuals. They are continuously evolving products of people integrating with each other. Number 12, the characteristic of culture is idealistic. Culture is idealistic in nature because it embodies the ideals, values, and norms of the group. It set ideals, goals before individuals, which is worth attaining. In other words, culture is the sum total of ideals and values of individuals in society. And number 13 of characteristic of culture is transmitted among members of society. The culture ways are learned by persons from persons. Many of them are handed down by one's elders like parents, teachers, and others of a somewhat older generation. That means that someone teaches him and he learns. So, for the example of this characteristic is a teacher teach the students of cultural ways of others, so the students learns and adapt. It is so that if he or she will go to the other countries, he can now adapt the cultural ways of other countries. For example, Korean and in other countries. The number 14, the characteristic of culture is continually changing. All cultures change through time. No culture is static. However, most cultures are physically conservative in that they tend to resist change. Some resent more than others by enacting laws for the preservation and protection of the traditional cultural patterns while putting up barriers to alien ideas and things. It means that culture is not constant because it continues to change all cultural. Cultures change through time. So Continually changing is important so that you can adapt or change your culture into a better must. The number 15 of characteristic of a culture is variable. Culture are difference in behavior, outlook, and values between people from different societies. Body language, styles of humor, and attitudes towards family, authority figures, religions, gender roles, and time can all be very different in different cultures. In other places, like behavior, outlook, and values between people from different societies, body language, styles of humans, and attitudes towards family, authority figures, religions, gender roles, and time, so that there are different cultures and different ideas. In number 16, in characteristic of culture is culture integrated system. An integrated system of belief, traditions, and customs that govern or influence a person's behavior. Culture is learned, shared by members of a group, and based on the ability to think in terms of symbols. And the last characteristic of culture, language is the chief vehicle of culture. A specialized language pattern serves as a common bond to the members of a particular group or subculture, although culture is transmitted in a variety of ways. Language is one of the most important vehicles for perpetuating cultural patterns. Without language, we can never understand each other, so that is why language is the chief vehicle of culture. Now, let's go proceed to the function of culture. When we say function of culture, function means the use. So, in other words, we will now discuss the use of culture. The first function of culture is culture-defined situation culture. Provides individual a set of ready-made definition of situation. Culture helps in understanding and predicting the human behavior, and also it provides channel of interaction of individuals within the group. So culture-defined situation is important because it helps understand the human person's or behavior, to provide channel of interacting for individuals within the group, and it helps protecting the human being and its behavior, so that is why culture-defined situation is very important. The second function of culture is culture defines attitudes, values, and goals. Attitudes, values, and goals are defined by the culture, while the individual normally learns them as unconsciously as he learns the language. Attitudes are a tendency to feel and act in a certain ways. In these ways, cultures determines the goals of life. This means culture defines attitudes, values, and goals. So attitudes, values, and goals of a person is important to a culture because attitudes define what you are, who you are, values you who, deeds and goals you to become in life. And the third is culture define myths, legends, and the supernatural. They may inspire force, effort, and sacrifice, and bring comfort in bereavement. Culture also provides the individual with a ready-made view of the universe. The culture is defined. Divine power and important moral issues are defined by this culture. And lastly, the last function of culture is culture provides behavioral patterns. The individual needs to go through painful trial and error learning to know what foods can be eaten or how to live among people without fear. He finds a ready-made set of patterns waiting him, which he needs only to learn and follow. So this means that cultural behavioral health patterns. So in order to have a successful life, you have to encounter trial and error learning. So these are the four functions of a culture. And lastly, let us define the meaning of the culture and society. So the meaning of the culture is represent the belief and practice of a group, while the society is represent the people who share those belief and practice. And that will be all my topic. Good day again. Thank you for listening.